So can you tell me how the drugs went? So was it marijuana, water, and then coke, or was cocaine already here, or did Rayful kind of...
Cocaine was like Cornell Jones. He brought it in. Cornell started selling it. Rayful picked up and turned it into, putting it on the street as crack.
Okay.
Cornell sold a lot of powder on Hanover Place. And he had the first big connect. He got locked up. Then all of a sudden Rayful blew up. But Rayful blew up because he was getting his supply from the West Coast, from guys that he'd met in Las Vegas.
Melvin, Butler,
yeah, the whole group.
Was that Cali cartel or Medellin?
That would have been Medellin back in those days, but it would have been through
the Crips?
La M.A. and the Crips maybe.
Okay.
Back, the whole Los Angeles thing. Those guys were meeting, the thugs in D.C. and all the East Coast thugs were generally meeting in Las Vegas and for gambling junkets.
Right.
And that's how they'd connect up. Or the way drugs worked in D.C. for years and years and years was the mob, the Italians, would hook up the black heroin dealers in D.C.
Was it like AC to D.C., the different hubs?
D.C. was always a user community. And they would just make sure that the heroin got distributed down here through the Italian. You can go back to the French Connection.
Yeah, I was looking at
half of the French Connection heroin would probably come here.
Here in Baltimore, that's the 401k drug,
right? Baltimore had a different thing because Baltimore was an important city itself. They were getting drugs in through their own port, through the harbor.
Wow.
So it was like a little bit more of a free form, supplier location. DC would get its supplies from New York.
That is so amazing.
Now, you can go back and look at cases like, the hell are those guys' names? All the heroin dealers back in those, we locked up several of them. We, meaning the FBI, when we first got into drugs, we locked up several of them.
The DC guys? Was that Blackwell's and Mathis?
Black Buster was one. But there was Golden Tape. I'm trying to remember the guys that did that. I can't think of it.
That's okay.
I got it all written in a sort of a drug history thing that I did in DC back before I retired. I still have it, and it sort of goes a little bit into the background of the drugs as I knew it. But there were DC guys, for example, that took trips to Amsterdam and met up and made big connections.
Overseas?
Yeah.
To Holland?
Yeah.
The DC guys? I'm sorry. I didn't know they were
guys
so
were sophisticated.
Refined. Yeah.
These guys were all sophisticated drug dealers. Guys like, have you heard of Kevin Gray?
Yes.
His father or uncle was Leon Gray. And it was a big, huge heroin dealer. His father or uncle, I can't remember what the relationship was, tried to kill a U.S. attorney who was prosecuting him for dealing drugs in District 4. This was back in the 60s or 70s.
Oh, good Lord.
And so all of that's been, I wish I could remember, there were like three, if you really want to go into the history of DC drug dealing, there's like three major players in that time period that all got locked up circa 1983 and 1984 in Baltimore, even though they were DC guys. And the reason is because, and that gets back to what I was telling you about before, DEA refused to bring cases into DC. Because DEA felt like DC juries were shit and the U.S. Attorney's Office in DC was shit. So they would, what they call, shop their cases in whatever way they could based on jurisdictional issues in either Baltimore or Virginia. They wouldn't deal with DC. We didn't have that luxury.
Wow.
Because first of all, I was in the Washington field office. I wasn't really supposed to go into Maryland or Virginia unless I had some really compelling reason, and that was approved by the office in Maryland or Virginia.
That is so, it's confusing a little, like.
Yeah, but the reality was, it was good for us, and it was especially good for me because I had to, learn how to deal with U.S. attorneys who were hoity-toity Harvard graduates who thought they knew more than the world.
Heavens, yeah.
I threatened to throw them out the window a few times.
They're still around, man. They were at the judiciary when I worked there.
But I got my ass in trouble a few times.
It's because they don't get in the field, like the ones at the judiciary, they come on rotations, like across different.
I mean, we had some good, smart guys like Mike Volkoff and Russell Duncan, Odessa Vincent, Angelique Chatterbetti, Ken Wings. We had those were our saviors because they really gave a shit and would work the cases in the fashion that we thought was best. Especially Mike Volkoff. He was like our ace. He did the First Street crew case with me and DEA, and you had to see this. We all got a big award after the successful prosecution of the First Street case. One FBI agent and about 10 DEA agents.
Oh, wow.
And Volkoff was like gritting on all of them because he hated them all. He liked working with us. Oh, it was silly.
No,
we were
great.
silly. Anyway, so we had R Street, First Street, and Perry. I started that case right around the same time First Street got resolved. Then we were doing, and you had asked me about this, then we were also, our squad was doing Newton Street and P Street.
Oh, my heavens.
And Benning Road and Simple City. So we had at one point we had 6 racketeering cases, which was not just amazing in the FBI.
Right.
The biggest OC operations in New York and Chicago never worked that many simultaneous racketeering cases, but we had 6 of them going at one time. And then we ended up throwing in the Kentucky Courts crew case, which was really about trying to prosecute the guy who had killed the D.C. police officer, Jason White.
That's not the same guy who went into the building and...
No. You're talking about, that's the guy that killed Martha and, that's Benny Lee Lawson.
Yeah, that guy.
But before that happened, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, well, it was, we're getting ready to celebrate the 25th anniversary, myself and all my colleagues. Donzel McCauley was sort of a runner for the Kentucky Courts crew. A Kentucky Courts crew is a bunch of kids.
It's in D.C.?
Yeah.
Kentucky.
And if you know where Kentucky Courts was nothing. It was like, it was being handled by one device. I mean, it was like one of these things where, why are we working this case?
Right.
Because they were all crack dealers, and they were all young. They were in their teens, a lot of them. But Donzel, who was 24, 25 years old, was not only a runner, but he was kind of like he was their main badass.
Okay.
He walks up the stairs in the townhouse right across from Kentucky Courts, and 2 cops stop him. A white guy named Jason White and his partner, black female, and I can't remember her name, but Donzel turns around. They say, give me your ID. It was a stop and frisk type thing.
Right.
But they knew what he was walking into was a crack house.
Right. And
they knew that from, patrolling the area. So it was more than probable cause. It was more than just like a Terry stop kind of thing. But they're on the scene, he was
Okay, sorry.
That's all right. He turns around and shoots Jason dead, boom, right away, and shoots the woman police officer. She gets wounded. She returns fire, but her gun then changed, so she can't really do anything. He runs, thank God, doesn't kill her, but he did kill Jason. Well, they find him, I don't know, a couple of blocks away. The DC police find him, they recover the gun, and DC police and the whole family are like going to the U.S. Attorney's Office and saying, okay, well, what are y'all going to charge him with?
Right.
And from the DC police, or from the way the law was at that time, the best they could charge him with was second-degree murder. They didn't have murders of police officers. They didn't have, murder with aggravating circumstances or anything like that. They just had second-degree murder, which maximum penalty was 25 years.
This is on the DC local level?
Yeah, local level.
Oh, my God.
So the U.S. Attorney's Office came to us and said, could we do anything about maybe making a record? By this point, we had done like 4 good prosecutions of racketeering cases, 3 or 4. And I just completed the Perry case. So we said, well, we'll give it a shot. See. And the difference was the U.S. Attorney's Office, by this time, they were all like, well, we'll do whatever you want. And, we'll be more aggressive, and, we'll do this. I mean, Angie, they were giving us search warrants that they would have never given us before.
Wow.
And we wore that place out. We hit every apartment in that complex and locked up, 20 kids, and most of them were adults.
Right.
The ones that we had to lock up were adults. But when we did that, we found out who the supplier was. So we had a good drug target in there. He was giving them about 2 or 3 keys a week just to that little group. And he broke and rolled and said, yeah, my boy Donzel screwed up and killed that police officer. And he was all sorry. And so basically what we did was we popped him. He gives up Donzel. We already had Donzel really on the murder, but now we had him in the racketeering case.
Right.
So Donzel today is doing life without possibility of parole.
Okay.
Because we got him in a racketeering and CCE murder charge.
Wow.
Now, that was 25 years ago. He was convicted on the same day that Shawn Branch was convicted.
Why is Shawn out? Why is it
and the same day that Wayne was convicted. So,
oh my God.
March 30th, 25 years ago, was like our high point day. We locked up all 3 of these guys and closed our cases. But more importantly than that, 2 out of 3 are still in jail. Because Donzel, because of violence, was convicted and given life.
Good.
Wayne obviously is doing life.
Thank God.
Whatever his new name is.
I don't know.
Nakosa, whatever.
No, some new name.
But Shawn gets out.
Why is he out? When I read it, I'm like scared.
He was convicted in Superior Court of second-degree murder. 25 years.
DC court.
Yeah. Now, he was convicted. It's a funny story. You remember when I was telling you about the black and white thing with DC juries and stuff like that? Well, we had one of the agents on my squad was a guy named Mark King.
Okay.
Who, think about like Denzel Washington. Only pretty.
Oh, that's even better.
That was Mark King.
Wow.
He was an impressive-looking guy who was one of our agents on our squad, who was the case agent on Shawn Branch. Well, so we take the case to court. He and I, Mark and I, and John Bevington, and a couple of, and a U.S. Marshal by the name of Karen Dan, we were sort of helping out on the case. All I was doing was kind of feeding them information. And I gave them the name of a guy who had seen Shawn do a murder up on 3rd Street. And so they went and interviewed the guy and turned him and made him into a witness. Well, he was a thug. He was like just a criminal. Bernie Grimm ate him alive on the stand. So the case sort of hinged on that guy's testimony.
Okay.
But Mark had shown him the photo spread. So in order to sort of rehabilitate the witness, they put Mark at the end of the case on and all of the ladies on the jury fell in love with Mark.
Strategy. That's a good strategy.
I had nothing to do with it.
That's a great strategy.
But they all walked out and said, Mark wouldn't lie to us. That's what I always told Mark. I said, the only reason you locked that boy up was because you're so pretty. Oh, God bless him. He's passed away.
He did? Oh.
Yeah. I mean, it really was interesting.
Yeah.
Most days.
Wow.
So, I mean, sometimes it works for you, and the jurors, sometimes they work for you, and sometimes they, not so much.
Yeah. Well, how about...
So he was Superior Court, and it was like the third trial that I think he'd been up for, and he'd killed witnesses that led to those other trials, and that's why he got, he beat all of his previous cases. Mm-hmm. So Sean was up, frankly, I'll be amazed if he lasts a year on the street. Because the families of his victims are still out there.
He's going around. He wrote a book about,
right?
Yeah.
I told the co-case agent, John Davidson, about that. I said, John, you got to buy his book.
Yeah, he wrote a book. And from what I understand, I'm not buying it, but there was somebody who knows him who, like, Eon was locked up in prison from the time he was 17 to like 2010, so most of his young adult life. So I guess he was friends with him. He's telling me about this book, and I said, well, that sounds like he's like confessions. Does he not know there's no statute of limitation on that? I guess he's thinking, hey, I'm out. He has he has a Facebook page, these guys, and he has a big old luxury car, and he's bragging about this. This is crazy.
There's a rap singer back in those days who's the Prince of Poetry. I don't remember his name, but he was Montana Terrace's voice.
Oh my!
And he put Sean on several of his CDs.
Are you kidding me?
And Sean talks or sings or raps or whatever it is about some of the people he's killed.
Oh, sweet Jesus.
So we tried to use that in court against him, and the judge wouldn't allow it.
Well, what about this book? I hope that you can use that, because he's just bragging about it.
Somebody'd have to resurrect those old cases from 30 years ago, and they were. Most of them are now 30 years old. So, I don't know.
With murder, he was only charged with one. He was
only convicted of one murder.
Right, but
But he's probably done, like I say, at least 10.
He brags about that in the book. Well, as a character, it's like his autobiography. And I said, these guys aren't so great.
If he's doing just what you said,
yeah.
In other words, claiming that the character did all this, they can't use that as evidence.
Oh my God, that's frustrating.
Yeah, well.
Oh my heavens.
Little Sean.
A Bentley in the hood.
I've got.
McKenna. Who does that?
I should send you the lyric, because I've got it still. I mean, the guy who was the Prince of Poetry, I don't remember his name.
Oh, this is the rap guy who put him on.
Yeah, he was actually very talented.